So in this video we will be taking a look at a scenario where Egypt from my WICSO comes to the real world at their peak. This is the first video I'm doing where a country from my WICSO comes to the real world. I have made a video previously for what if the gold team, the Ethiopian one, came to the real world. If you haven't watched that, I will leave a link to it in the description. So after this video, please make sure to go and watch that one. But this is going to be if Egypt from my WICSO came to the real world. If you do end up enjoying this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. So, the first thing that this Egypt will be doing is going after regular Egypt. Regular Egypt has basically collapsed from this, and, well, if you look at it, they only have a tiny bit of the Nile right here, and apart from that, it's just desert. So, Egypt is going to be annexing regular Egypt. But that is not going to be the only country that Egypt is kind of like clearing up, because up here, Israel barely even exists, so they're just going to be getting annexed. I imagine they probably could survive a little bit. Now, with a country like Syria and Iraq, it's a bit interesting. While they have lost a lot of their land, they haven't lost all of their valuable areas, so we're just going to assume that they managed to survive this. But maybe not for long, because Egypt is now going to be invading one of these countries, and that is going to be Iraq. So in in my real WICSO, Egypt did try to invade a Mesopotamian country that existed here. However, they failed, but now they've been plopped on this real life map, so they're going to be trying it here. Egyptian forces will quickly cross in, taking Baghdad almost immediately. It's like right on the border, and they will be then moving down into this Mesopotamian area. This northern part of Iraq is then going to fall, and from here the country will be cut in two, and the rest of Iraq is going to surrender. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So pretty simply, in this peace treaty we're going to be seeing some full annexation. But then Egypt is going to be facing a little bit of a challenge. And that challenge is actually going to be a coalition forming against Egypt. And this coalition is going to be consisting of a few countries that have lost land from Egypt being formed onto this map. These countries are going to be Sudan, Eritrea, Saudi Arabia, and Syria as well. Now, Libya didn't join because basically all of Libya's population is over here. They also really don't want to fight a war when they have just lost some of their population to Egypt. So this is going to be the coalition that forms. Also, Lebanon joins it, but they kind of got invaded by Egypt first, so yeah. But anyway, let's begin the fighting. So the first thing that Egypt is going to be doing is they're going to be getting pushed back, because Egypt was of course not expecting this. Egypt is going to be pushed out of this Eritrean land and then pushed up the coast here, and a special Sudanese force is going to be sent up the Nile. We also then see Saudi Arabia sending some special forces into the desert right here, and they managed to take quite a lot of this Egyptian land actually. However, up north over here, as I have just said, Egypt already had troops in Lebanon to invade the country, so they managed to make quick work of Syria. These forces up here are then going to be moved down to tackle these fronts. Speaking of tackling these fronts, Egypt manages to retake this coastal land as well as this Nile land. However, this Saudi Arabian area down here is going to fall over to Saudi Arabia, and they will continue marching up, now even going into southern Mesopotamia. However, Egypt will be launching a full-on assault into Sudan. They managed to take all of the Sudanese coast, so now they have to go through this Eritrean area if they want coast. However, that's not going to last long, as Egypt manages to take their exclave. This is also going to cause Eritrea to surrender, as they basically lose all of their stuff. And Egypt will then be going down the Nile, kind of meeting up with it at this point right here. So they go to it and then they don't really cross it. Back up north, Saudi Arabia is fully kicked out of Mesopotamia. And Egypt makes a few landings on the coast, taking this area right here, which I believe this is Mecca and Medina. I might be wrong though. From here, a bunch of this coastal land is going to be taken until all of it falls. Back down over here in South Sudan, this city, which I believe is their capital, is going to fall, and after taking a bit more of this land, they lose full access to the Nile and they decide to surrender. Now Saudi Arabia is the only one left, and after getting just completely blitzed back, they will also be surrendering. So that was a very big war, and this is really starting to show a lot of countries the strength of Egypt. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So in this peace treaty here, we can see that Egypt has greatly expanded. They take a very large portion of Saudi Arabia, now having a second connection point over here to the Persian Gulf. They take all of this land over here east of the Nile, and this includes all of Eritrea, and Sudan is converted into an Egyptian puppet state. Shortly after this, and by shortly I mean like a few weeks or days after, Kuwait is going to be invaded. But then Egypt is kind of going to be facing a challenge, as a lot of these nations up here are actually going to be forming a defensive pact. And this defensive pact is going to be known as the Middle Eastern Anti-Egyptian Alliance. And this alliance is going to be pretty strong. It's going to also include Saudi Arabia. It's going to include Qatar and Yemen. It's also going to include Ethiopia and Libya, even though these guys technically aren't Middle Eastern. And yeah, this is a big kind of blow for these guys, as this basically fully cuts them off from expanding anywhere. They don't really see a point invading into Chad, Central Africa, or South Sudan because, like, what's the point? So there's really only one country that they easily have access to, and that country is going to be who they're invading. And that is going to be a country that they have had an interesting history with in my WICSO that they certainly don't like, and that is Greece. Greece in my WICSO is one of the reasons that Egypt lost a massive war in it. But Egypt is going to be invading Greece. They land on Crete and Rhodes, and then they just take a bunch of these Aegean islands before landing on this big southern island right here, and immediately storming into Athens. Greece here is a lot weaker than Greece in my WICSO, so Egypt is kind of surprised by how quickly they're falling. Nevertheless, Greece is going to fall, and in the peace treaty, Egypt decides to fully annex them. Actually, they don't decide to do that. They annex all of the islands and make this mainland area and Corfu a puppet. From here they decide to continue up north. They invade into Albania and North Macedonia as well. And they all kind of squidge this together into a very interesting puppet state. But then Egypt is kind of going to make a mistake. And that mistake is going to be invading into Bulgaria. And you might be wondering, why is this a mistake? Surely it wouldn't matter too much. Well, when they invade into Bulgaria and they take Sofia and it's going well for them. However, on the border of Turkey when they're invading in, a pretty big border skirmish is going to happen right here. And well, these guys aren't going to listen to Egypt when they say it was an accident. And well, if you know what that means, then yeah. So the whole Middle Eastern Defensive Pact is going to be declaring war on Egypt, and Egypt is freaking out right now because not only were they not expecting this, they also definitely weren't ready for it. So let's see how this war is going to play out. So Egypt is going to have kind of an advantage because they already had their military mobilized up here. However, it's also a disadvantage because their military is only up here. Bulgaria is going to quickly fall, and all the troops that were in here is going to quickly advance into Istanbul and take the city and make a landing. There's also a landing made along the whole Turkish coast. The rest of the Egyptian military that wasn't in this northern area was down here on the border of Ethiopia, so these guys are going to quickly move in. And somewhat there was some forces on the border of Libya, however Libya is actually going to overwhelm these troops and push them back a bit. And now it's time for the main offensive in the areas where the blue team certainly had an advantage, and that is in this Mesopotamian area up here, where the blue team is going to smash straight across the border and move up to the end of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers right here. They set up a defensive line on the river border, and then a week after they cross it, and this is in coordinates with an invasion by Saudi Arabia and Yemen. These two are going to move up the coast, and then they will connect up over here with this Iranian area. Over here in Libya, we see an Egyptian landing right over here in Tripolitania, and this actually threatens Tripoli, and it's going to force a lot of this land to fall back over to Egypt. Egypt is then going to send some special forces into the desert and take a bit of this land, but they're really not going to be focusing on it too much. Over here in Turkey, the advance does manage to continue, however, the offensive is kind of stopped at this river. They meet the river, and it kind of stops there. This leads to Cyprus kind of being encircled, and thus it falls to Egypt. However, then a very big offensive is going to be launched, and it's actually going to be in coordination with a rebellion, and that is a rebellion in Sudan. So a massive breakaway is going to take place right over here, and this even lands very close to the capital of Sudan, and this is a very large rebellion, and this is causing a lot of threat to Egypt. We also see over here these guys have a lot of success in this Arabian area of Egypt, and they are pushed back to their mainly coastal areas, and this is a very big blow for Egypt. However, this land isn't all important. I mean, some of this land is important, but most of it is just desert. Down here in this African area, Ethiopia and Sudan officially connect. This is a very big blow for Egypt, and along with this, the capital of Sudan is retaken. It isn't all bad news for Egypt though, as they managed to capture Tripoli and Libya is going to surrender. But these forces, there wasn't really many of them fighting there, so they're not going to be too much of help. Down over here we see, first of all, this is now going to be invaded land. And Egypt is going to attempt to cut off these guys again. And it's going to go pretty well. And then we actually see a new country join in on this war. And that is going to be South Sudan. South Sudan is currently having some instability issues, and they feel like if they invade Sudan, for some reason that'll be sorted. Interesting thinking. Ethiopia kind of figured out this plan though, and they're going to smash their forces straight into South Sudan, quickly taking the capital. So this land is kind of just going to go over to Egypt, which, well, you can probably just tell by the shape of this front line. Yeah, that's not going to last. This will also lead to a pushback over here. And up north, we see Turkey cross this river and make a very big advance. They take Ankara and kind of disconnect these Egyptian forces. However, there is still a very big holdout over here in this European area. Probably about, maybe like a third of Egypt's whole army is up here. But then Egypt is kind of going to have to make a difficult decision. They are now being pushed back in this Turkish front up here, and as well as in this Ethiopian front. They are going to retreat from one of them in order to secure the other. This is going to lead one of them to fall. However, they believe this is the best option. And they are actually going to be deciding to retreat from this Turkish area. So in a very big move, a large amount of forces is retreated all the way back to this Sinai area over here, and this allows this front down here to be stabilised. Up here, well, let's just say it's not going to go too well. I know I had just said that this area had been fortified, but some instability issues here, as well as these guys just sending in like a load of forces, is going to really allow a push to be made. All of Bulgaria will be liberated, and a very large Albanian rebellion will be taking place, and this is going to eventually lead to the complete fall of this land. Even the islands are going to fall, as well as the Greek navy is being set back up. Going along with this, all of this southern land over here is going to fall over to the blue team, and these guys are now invading into southern Libya. This is going to make these guys have to choose, either go for this land over here or really go in on Libya. They're going to choose to go for this land. So a Yemeni and Saudi Arabian offensive, as well as a Ethiopian offensive, is going to liberate a large portion of the coast of Eritrea. This land of the Nile is going to be crossed, and all of this coast is going to fall, with a pretty impressive encirclement taking place, and this is going to really hurt the morale of Egypt. And now the core Egyptian land is being invaded. It also turns out it was the right decision to invade over in this area, because they didn't really have to invade into Libya, as, well, it's kind of just going to rebel away. A few forces that were down here for some reason are going to be taken. And Egypt is now pushed back to, like, IRL Egyptian land. The Suez Canal, which I believe this river thingy is the Suez Canal, it's going to be, like, invaded up to, and a big offensive is going to take place down here, up to this part of the Nile. Cairo, which is a city that these guys have been given for some reason, is going to be sieged, and this coastal land is going to fall up here, as well as this southern land, which I just coloured in. And finally, the core area of the Nile is going to fall, except for Alexandria. A very big battle is going to take place, and shortly after it's going to fall, and Egypt is going to officially surrender. Well, they kind of have to surrender because they don't even exist anymore, but still. So yeah, Egypt has lost the war. I'm not going to draw a peace treaty for this, as it would probably just be, you know, restoring the world to its original borders before Egypt plopped down onto the map. But if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Please also let me know in the comments which WICSO country you would like to see become on the map next, and I will see you there. And a big thank you to all of our channel superfans. This includes Laser Taste and English Mapper, as well as our channel members, Chilton Mapping, Swiss Switzerland, Coley, and another thank you to our recent donators, Chilton Mapping. Thank you guys.